Okay. And you'll let me know if you can't see what I got in front of me. But good afternoon, everyone. I'm so excited to be here. I'm April Hines, the journalism and mass comm librarian at the University of Florida in Gainesville. And today I'm going to talk about framing our value and how I sell research and instruction services through meaningful faculty outreach. It's one of my absolute favorite things to talk about. And I've been doing this for a long time. So I've been in my current position as the UF journalism and mass comm librarian for the last 12 years. And then, but I've been working in the UF library system and academic libraries for 20 years. So I'm going to start out by saying that I'm going to share some of the strategies and approaches to faculty outreach that have worked really well for me. And if you're watching this and you're thinking like, yeah, right, girl, this is too much. There's no way I could be doing all of this. Maybe you're a solo librarian or you have a small branch. I haven't done all of this at the same time either. These are different things that I have piloted and tried at different times and rolled out over many years. And so, I understand that it's not like an all at once approach. There might be bits and pieces that can work for you and maybe some that wouldn't necessarily work as much in your environment. So if it's all right with you guys, I'll go ahead and get started. Okay. So why am I talking about this? I really wanted to start out by sharing my instruction and research consultation stats, which again, I've been doing this for a long time, so since 2013. And while the State of U.S. Academic Libraries report shows that the average number of annual presentations to groups still lags relative to pre-pandemic levels, my instruction and research consultation stats have gone up almost every single year, except for the years that I was on parental leave, 2014 and 2019. And then, of course, 2020 during the pandemic, everything went down during that time. But then post-pandemic, I was able to kind of drum up business and sell those instruction and research services and kind of build that momentum again. And you can see that last year, I reached an all-time high for instruction and research consultations over my career. And while I would love to think that's because I'm such a great librarian and I'm, so good at instruction and sought after for my skills, I really don't think that's necessarily it. I have colleagues who are way better at research assistance and instruction than I am, mentors that I've looked up to. But I think what's made my numbers go up is the way I've learned to frame these services, to sell them, to communicate their value to others. And I'm going to share with you some of those tips in a minute. Okay. So I've had two sort of big faculty outreach aha moments in my career that really shaped how I decided to move forward. So the first one happened even before I was working as a faculty librarian. This is when I was a staff member at the UF Education Library. Here at UF, we have 7 branches. So at the time, I was working in the library serving our college education. And my director at the time sent out a faculty survey and she asked the typical questions like, how often do you use the library? How often do you go to the library? How often do you seek out help from a librarian? How often do you use our digital services? And the results were pretty depressing. It was a lot of like, no, never, not really, don't need that. And, we were like, well, geez, do we just pack it up and go home? But my director did not give up and she sent out a second survey. And this time she asked very specific questions. So she asked questions like, do you need help with the research metrics? Do you need help with navigating open access and predatory publishing? Do you need help with, citation metrics or developing searches for a systematic review? And then the answers came back, yes, 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 yes. And in one of the comment sections, somebody had written, yeah, I need help with that. Do you do that? And then that's when I realized at that point in my career, it's not that they don't need us, they don't know what we do, and they don't understand how what we do applies to their needs. So that was definitely an aha moment. The other one happened more recently when I was asked by someone actually outside of my liaison area. This was a faculty member in um, agricultural communication in our agriculture college. She had reached out to me asking if I could do a quick demo on some newspaper databases for her class. It was a science communications class. And, she basically wanted them to learn how to, uh, navigate some of the advanced features, how to export results. It was meant to be a very straightforward demo presentation. And so I said, well, yeah, I can do that. But if they're doing science communications and they're working on writing stories for the general public, I could show them some other resources. I could show them how to find government information. I could show them how to find archival pieces for multimedia work. I could show them how to like background sources, how to find scientific experts. And then she was like, oh, yeah. Yeah, that sounds amazing. Can you do that too? So when I went and did a session for that class, the feedback was really positive. The students kept saying, how did I not know about this? I've never had a session like this before. And then the instructor came up to me afterwards and she said, I didn't know this is what library instruction meant. Like, I see the requests that go out every semester. Let us know if you need help with research or library instruction. She's like, I thought library instruction was you're going to show my students how to find an article in Web of Science and how to find a book on the shelf. She's like, I didn't know this is what it could look like. So that made me realize that I had to paint a picture for faculty of what library instruction could look like and what that could look like for them. So I started sending an email out to my departments a few weeks before the semester started. And the way I craft this email is I start out by saying I do not have a canned presentation. I never teach the same session twice. I always connect my instruction to the curriculum, and I have taught everything from. And then I give sort of a bulleted list tied directly to their needs in those departments of the type of information that I know they're always struggling to find quality sources, to navigate resources that are not openly available on the web, platforms that are, not scraped easily by an AI tool, for example. So I give these concrete examples, like I can help you find market research consumer info. I can help you find data and background info. I can help you find archival video, scholarly content for literature review. And then I say it's not just about communicating how to use resources that the library pays for, but also just how to navigate the information landscape in general. So I can also, be a guest speaker and philosophically discuss topics related to information or media literacy. What does this look like? Why does it matter? How does information literacy or media literacy fit into an ethical society? Things like that. So once I started giving those specific examples, tying it to their needs, giving them a menu of options, making it very clear that I can customize and that this is a big part of my job, then the floodgates open and I was getting inundated with requests for instruction every semester. And I also started attaching a list of, and here are classes that I've taught in the past. Here are instructors that I've worked with in the past. I've reached, I taught this many classes, reached this many students. So they know that their peers have already been making use of my services, which goes into my next and probably most important tips. And that's this whole idea of peers are benefiting. So this was another aha moment in my career. I saw this tweet many years ago by a law librarian named Sally Stieglitz, and she had tweeted about how she never got purchase requests from faculty until she started an email with, "Thanks to everyone who has already sent in purchase requests." The idea that colleagues had benefited really primed the pump. And so I started to think about that. And also in my emails, I say things like, "My schedule fills up quickly this time of year, thanks to those of you who have already sent in requests." Now, today, that is very true. My schedule does fill up quickly this time of year. The very first time I sent that out an email, was that 100% true? Did I have a totally full schedule? Not really, but they didn't need to know that. I had a few. And then I'm really lucky in that communications faculty are very extroverted. They kind of share a lot about their work on social media. So anytime I see that one of my faculty members is talking about sharing about my services, about my impact, how I'm benefiting them, you better believe I'm going to share that because I want their peers and their networks and their communities to see how their peers are benefiting from something that they may not have leveraged yet. So I really try to be visible as possible to show my departments how their peers are benefiting in hopes that they'll see that and go, "Oh, I totally need help with that too. Why are they benefiting from something that I'm not?" So an example is I talked a lot on my like LinkedIn, other platforms about how I had been having a lot of success meeting with faculty in my departments to help them find either library licensed or open education resources to coincide with their course objectives and their curriculum as they're designing their courses to make their courses 100% cost free. So in doing that in a CJC, I say CJC, that's the abbreviation for College of Journalism and Communications, instructor who had recently retired was still maintaining a blog about effective teaching practices in higher education. So when she saw me discussing this on my social media of like, yeah, I just, I'm so happy I just helped another instructor make their class 100% cost free. She was like, "This is really great. Do you want to co-write a blog post with me about how librarians and teaching faculty can work together to make their courses cost free?" And I said, "Sure." And we wrote this blog post. And then after she published it, I sent it out to all the, not even just the faculty, but faculty, staff, anyone who's on the listserv for the College of Journalism and Communications, adjuncts, graduate students. And I said, "Oh, here's a blog post that I co-wrote with one of your colleagues about making courses cost-free uh, through librarian faculty collaboration. Just wanted to share it with you all." So then this is another example of one of their peers collaborating with a librarian and then making that visible to them. Another example of this is one of the instructional designers that worked with the Office of Teaching Excellence for UF. They have a Teaching Beyond the Podium podcast. So they invited myself and another faculty member I had been working with to come and actually discuss on a podcast how we work together to create an affordable course so that other faculty could learn from that process. So that was a really good opportunity for me to make that work visible and to also show other faculty members how they could benefit from something that one of their peers has already benefited from. And again, here's another photo of when I and several of the faculty members from my department, we were at a community event for Black History Month, honoring the legacy of Matthew Louis, who was the first African American newspaper editor and publisher in Florida. And I had helped this team do a lot of historical newspaper research and archival research to find more information about Matthew Louis that was hidden. So again, you better believe I'm taking a photo. I'm talking about that collaboration. I'm posting about it on my LinkedIn or, my different platforms. I used to be really active on Twitter, but we know Twitter's kind of had a nosedive in recent years. Or if you're on Blue Sky. And if you're thinking like, April, I'm just not that active on social media, I'm not comfortable talking about myself on social media, then it doesn't necessarily have to be you. If you have a communications director for your library or for your campus, if you have a really cool project that you're really proud of and that you want to bring some visibility to, you can send them a photo or send them some information about it and ask if they would be willing to put it on the library's social media or the campus's social media and talk about this really cool faculty librarian collaboration if you're not wanting to put it on your own. Because I know people have varying levels of comfort with that. And going along with peers are benefiting, I will say that I have learned over and over again that FOMO, the fear of missing out, goes a long way. So I literally just had an example of this in the last week. I followed my own advice and it worked again. So I had met with an instructor who is in our marketing department, and she uh, had some questions about some consumer platforms that we subscribe to. So I met with her and our business librarian, the three of us met, and I told her, if you don't feel like you have time to really go into detail about these resources in class or bring a librarian to do an instruction session, you can always send your students to us. We can meet with them in groups or one-on-one. And she said, yeah, that would be good, but I really don't see my students doing that, like following up with the librarian on their free time. And I said, oh, well, the PR and advertising students meet with me all the time. I have two consultations scheduled for tomorrow. And so then she immediately said, really? What do you talk to them about? What do you do with PR and advertising? And then so suddenly she was interested because she was kind of confronted with this idea that other students in similar fields were benefiting from something that her students were not. So then, once I told her, yeah, I do sessions with, I come into classes, I also meet with the agency. So this photo on the left is when I had met with students in, they're called the agency. It's a student run PR and advertising agency that has real world clients here at UF. And I meet with them at least once a semester to, talk about finding consumer information, business industry information to that they can use to inform themselves when they're working with their clients. So once I told her that, she said, "Oh, you meet with the agency?" And I could see her being like, "Well, if the agency is making use of this, then we should be too." So she said, "Could you meet with the Student Marketing Association too? They also have real world clients. They also compete in competitions. They could really use that leg up with finding higher quality information that's not just a Google search away." And so now I'm on a thread with them, setting up a meeting for the first time. And previously, they weren't interested at all in meeting with the librarian or utilizing librarian resources beyond just a simple, hey, how do I log into that database again? So I'm always trying to think about how can I paint this picture? How can I sell this to this particular faculty member? What what other collaborations have I been involved in that they might be interested in? And then, so I wanted to talk about how important it is to position ourselves as experts, especially when you're trying to sell instruction and research services. So, this graph on the left is from a presentation that my friend and colleague at Towson University, some of you might know her, her name's Joyce Garginski. She did a really interesting survey where she looked at quotes across many different newspaper articles about fake news, misinformation, disinformation. And every time an expert was quoted about these topics, information literacy, media literacy, she coded and organized, well, who are these experts that they're interviewing in these news stories? And you can see that librarians were only quoted 5 times out of 761 quotes, um, only followed by teachers, and that the highest number of quotes were actually from politicians, professors, academics, journalists. So when people are thinking, who's an expert on information literacy, media literacy, fake news, they're not thinking of us, even though we know we're experts on this. We know we deal with this every single day. Um, but the general public, including the faculty and students that we serve, don't know that we're experts in this. So ever since I've seen that presentation, I've always had that in the back of my mind. And I think about how can I promote myself on my campus as an expert in these topics. So here's an example of an interview. You can find it on YouTube that I did with our communications director for the libraries. And she interviewed me during News Literacy Week about my tips for, avoiding fake news, misinformation, how to be a more conscious mindful consumer of news. And that interview did really well. I got a lot of views. It was shared many times. There were a lot of my own faculty and students on campus that mentioned that they had seen this interview. And it really was just one way of positioning myself as an expert. And when you think about it, many of us have those experts pages on our university websites where journalists, if they're looking for an expert on phosphate mining or something that they may want to talk about in the news, they search that directory of experts, and not a single, and I'm just as bad, myself and none of my colleagues have submitted ourselves as experts to be interviewed on our university communications page. But why not? How are we any less of an expert than anybody else on those topics that we deal with every day? So this is another example of claiming our expertise. Um, this picture on the right is from an initial team that came together around a grant project called UF Intersections, and it was meant to bring together faculty and staff from different disciplines to kind of come up with an interdisciplinary grand challenge question, and then create programming and coursework and events around that question, kind of bringing together all of our expertise. So when I heard about this grant project, I, or that this was being funded, I went to a networking event and I talked to many people who were putting together teams for this grant. And I said, do you have an information literacy expert on your team? This particular group, our question was, how can we engage ethical issues in public life? And so for me, the biggest component of engaging with ethical issues is information literacy and having quality information, knowing how to interpret it, knowing how to disseminate it. So I said, if you are looking for an information literacy expert for your team, I'm happy to do that. I work in the libraries. I'm the journalism librarian. I know a lot about media literacy. And they totally took me up on it. They're like, yeah, sure, that would be great. So then here I am. Here's most of us on our team. This went from a grant project to when the grant project ended, we enjoyed it so much that now we're a full working group. We plan events, forums, speaking events, what we call ethics cafes, which are student discussion groups every semester. We have interns. It's turned into a really cool thing. And on the left is a video interview I did talking about this project. Not many other faculty members on the team wanted to be interviewed on camera, but I feel like it's important to make my work visible, especially when there's so much confusion about what we do and what our expertise is. So it's not always comfortable, but when there are opportunities for me to put myself out there in a public way, I think it's important to do that. And so how do you keep that expertise going? So because I sold myself as an information literacy expert and, became a an important part of that team and that project. Now they call on me all the time to this was a panel discussion on after the conflict in Gaza, like what are our moral responsibilities to each other in a time of war? And we had a panel of experts from the Department of Religion, but then they asked me to speak about, especially in a time like this, how do we find quality information? How do we avoid um, information that's created to be harmful or to mislead or to create chaos. And so they brought me in as a speaker to talk about the media and information literacy components of that conversation. But they never would have thought to reach out to me if I hadn't have kind of inserted myself in the conversation to begin with. And then on the left, you can see here is a post I had on my LinkedIn about how because I got started in this ethics in the public sphere project, I worked really closely with like religion professors, philosophy professors, faculty members outside of my liaison area that I wouldn't ordinarily interact with. And then once they got to know me and what I do, they were like, oh, well, I teach a class on ethics. Can you come and talk about information literacy and why that's important and why that matters in an ethical society? And I was like, yeah, sure. So I had so much fun doing those sessions that it wasn't like a typical instruction session that I started kind of talking about how I do that and how much I love doing it, how much I would love to do more. And I've had several faculty members take me up on that. Um, so another really cool faculty outreach collaboration happened and resulted in this information literacy scholars program that we have here at UF. So there's a program at UF called the Innovation Academy, and it's students who instead of starting in the typical fall semester, they're on campus in the spring and the summer. And then during the fall, they don't have any in-person classes. I think they have some online classes, but they have a lot more freedom and flexibility to do internships and other types of extracurricular things in the fall. And because they're the Innovation Academy, they get a lot of support and training and business and personal branding, things like that. And so initially, when we made contact with the Innovation Academy, they weren't too interested in libraries or what the library could do for them. They were just like, yeah, maybe you can show them the 3D printers, maybe you can give them a tour. But then we were finally able to sit down and talk with them with our student success librarian, our instruction librarian, kind of a group of us. And we said, we know how important it is for students in the Innovation Academy to set themselves apart, to have an edge in internships they're applying for, in jobs they're applying for. Why don't we build a program where they go to 6 to 8 weeks worth of workshops on things like um, creating a research question, evaluating sources, creating a really great research poster, making engaging graphics. And we can really set them up to have all these great information literacy skills that can set them apart no matter what they're studying, no matter what field they're in. And after, they complete those 8 weeks of workshops, they get a digital badge, they graduate as an information literacy scholar, they sort of they graduate from the program and then they can put that on their CV, on their LinkedIn, and that will be a really great way to give them an edge to set them apart from other students. And they loved that idea. Once we sold it as this like exclusive program that students had to apply to and get in, and they got a special credential, and it was like an in-person series of workshops they could do during the semester when they have only online classes and they're kind of craving that in-person interaction. They loved that. They were all in. We went from barely being able to get them to do a tour of the library to suddenly they wanted to sell this program to their students as a great way to give them an edge, this 6 to 8 weeks of extracurricular workshops. And we're doing it again this fall. We had a great success with it last fall. And we capped it at 20 students. We already have 19 registered. Okay. So many semesters ago, because I am the liaison to the PR department, we worked with a PR campaigns class in their final semester, and they took on the libraries as a client. So it was really great because not only did they develop entire campaign books and campaign strategies for us, we tasked them with like, we don't need to promote the library as a building. We need to promote our services and resources, especially our electronic services and resources. And so they did original research for us. They did their own surveys, they did their own focus groups, and they were able to get way more of a higher response rate from their survey than we've ever been able to get from ours because they're sending it out to their friends and their networks and their sororities or whatever. And so, what we found, one of their very interesting takeaways is that instructors are our biggest influencers. Nearly half of the students surveyed learned about library digital resources from their instructors. And I probably that's probably not a surprise to any of us. I know whenever I see a student, it's usually, yeah, my instructor told me to come find you, or my instructor told me to use this resource. Um, and what they suggested is that, we're always promoting faculty resources to faculty and student resources to students, but they suggested, why don't you do sessions for faculty on this is what the libraries can do for your students that you may not already know about. And the reason why I have this little picture of a coffee cup and a and a gift card is that was one of their suggestions to like get participation in these sessions is like offer them free coffee or, swag or gifts. And of course, we would love to have the funding to be able to do that every time. Maybe not every time, but um, it was a nice idea. But it really got me thinking that, an instructor may not think that they need to come to a workshop and learn about library resources, but I bet you they would be willing to come to a session, whether it was digital or in person, to learn about what the libraries can offer their students and how they can better communicate that to their students, because they really are our biggest influencers. And then I would say the second set of influencers, the most powerful influencers that I have found are instructional designers. So I work pretty heavily with instructional designers in our what they call CJC Online, which is a distance learning program for graduate students. But I also work with instructional designers and advisors who are here on campus for the in-person programs. And the instructional designers, they're the ones that faculty go to when they're creating a course, when they're having problems with students, when they're needing resources, when they're needing assistance. They're not going to us, but they do go to them. Or I should say, they don't always go to us, but they do go to them. So once I established relationships with the instructional designers, and they really understood what I could do and how I could help faculty, find resources as they design a course and make their courses cost free, how I could help create online modules for their students who maybe non-traditional students who've never written a research paper in the last 30 years. So once I made those connections, then the instructional designers were really promoting me to the faculty. And I got several emails that were like, so and so told me I should reach out to you. And this is just an example of me, of all the gifts that they have sent me because they've appreciated how much I've been able to help them with their faculty as they work to design courses. Um, so because I established a relationship with the instructional designers, they started and with the advisors, they started recommending that I come into a class that's taught through the CJC, which is sort of an intro to the major class and sort of like how to be a good student. I know a lot of campuses have those. And so I was able to get them to give me one lecture, 1 week dedicated to library resources. And when I do those sessions, I do it's not really an instruction session, it's more like a TED Talk where I'm like, here are the top 10 things I think every student should know about the libraries. Or, I'll customize it if they're distance students or if they're journalism students or whatever. And then at the end of that session, I ask them, which of these resources do you see yourself using? And then, did anything about this presentation surprise you that you found exciting? And if so, what? And that's been a really telling question because they say things like this. I found it surprising that librarians can do so much for you as they have a master in information. I was always under the assumption that they just checked out books. And we all know that students come into college not necessarily understanding what a modern academic librarian does, how we can help them. But in my experience, once I spell that out for them, and talk about, I don't just tell them to ask a librarian, but I talk about why they should ask a librarian and how it benefits them, that they're more than happy to take you up on it. They're more than happy to establish that connection. I met with a student yesterday who was like, "You're the first campus person that I've been able to talk to in person and like sit in their office. All my classes are online." It's just so nice that I can actually interact with someone who's not going to give me a grade or not going to judge me. And faculty members are not much better. This is a quote on the bottom here that I took from a presentation from my colleagues at the University of South Florida. They do a 1 week institute, Information Literacy Institute for faculty at their institution, where they take faculty through again what information literacy is, why it matters, how they can incorporate it into their classes, into their curriculum. And then this was a quote from the evaluations at the end of the program where a faculty member was saying, I had no idea that, librarians can help so much with our students' development as researchers. I'm afraid I thought librarians helped you find books and stacks and not much more. Sorry. So this is what we're constantly, it's like the eternal struggle. It's what we're constantly up against. Um, this is a quote from a book that two of my colleagues published about 10 years ago where they surveyed student users in academic libraries across many different campuses. And I'll never forget this quote. One of the students they surveyed said, when they were asked, have you ever asked a librarian for help? They said, I don't know what I'm supposed to ask them about. So that's when it clicked for me that we can't just tell students, go ask a librarian for research help. We have to really paint the picture and spell out what that means and what that looks like and apply it to their specific needs. So that's why I think it's so important to be constantly communicating what we do and why what we do matters and how we can help. So on the left is um, me presenting at the College of Journalism's kind of orientation. And that whole session is just me selling myself to them and why they should use my services and what my background is and how I can help. I'm not showing them the library website. I'm not telling them how to log in remotely. I'm just selling myself and my services, not only to the students, but to the faculty too. And then here on the right is a kind of a Meet Your Librarian video series we did. So this is a kind of fun getting to know you video where again, I talk about myself and I try to be kind of fun and approachable. There's some funny questions in there, but then also like how I can help you and why you should come, why it benefits you to establish a relationship with me. And this is a video that's embedded in a lot of classes. And you can see I get so many emails from people that start with, I saw your video, I enjoyed your video, you know? So, or I saw you speak at this event. So it really does pay off. And again, you guys are probably getting really sick of seeing my face by now, but anytime I have a positive interaction or I'm able to talk about what I do and how I can help on like one of my department's social media platforms, or if I have a positive experience with students or faculty or with instruction, or I can shine a light on what I do and what that looks like, I'm always looking for those opportunities. Because when no one knows what you do, which is really frustrating, you almost have to create a window to be showing people what you do over and over again. So another example of a collaboration that's been really fruitful, and that resulted from meaningful faculty outreach is there was an applied journalism class where students cover a story that they've chosen throughout the semester. They do a lot of in-depth research and reporting, and then at the end of the semester, they have like a multimedia piece, audio, video, photos. They do really in-depth reporting. And the instructor had me come in and do a typical instruction session, show them how to find a few different types of resources. But I said, like, I know that you have students pitch their story ideas at the beginning of the semester. Do you want me to come to the pitch meeting and like give them feedback on, if you're writing a story about this, here's some great ways to approach the fact finding for that story, or here's some good sources you might want to think about consulting, or here is some, government documents or some archives you haven't thought about. And she was like, "Yeah, sure, that would be great." So now I not only do an instruction session for that class, but I'm embedded throughout the entire class. I give them feedback at their pitch meeting. I'm there at the very end to give them feedback on the final product. And then if they want to meet with me throughout the semester, they can. They know that they have that opportunity available to them. And at the end of the semester, when they present about their research and reporting and the process, many of them will mention me as a valuable part of that process. But again, the instructor never would have thought to have me do more than just a simple instruction session. So I had to suggest that to her and put that in her mind. Phew, oh my gosh, you guys. I can't believe I made it through that. So, thank you so much for listening to my spiel. Again, these were just some strategies that have worked really well for me over the years and some collaborations that have been very successful. If you want to contact me, here's my contact information. But I would love to hear from you all and answer any questions or comments that you may have.
We have a question from Carrie asking, can you share, sorry, can you share about times that you were told no?
Yeah, I actually have a recent one. Thank you. For the first time in 12 years, I've been told that there's not going to be time to include me on the agenda for new graduate student orientation in CJC. I've always been given like a 30-minute slot, and this time I never received an email. So I reached out thinking it might have been an oversight. I was like, "Oh, I haven't heard of new graduate student orientation this year. Um, just wanted to check in." And then they replied that, basically thanks, but no thanks. Like they replied that, orientation for graduate students is really overwhelming. They have a lot of sessions, and they thought it would be more beneficial for me to actually come in and do something more in depth in their classes. Which I can see the benefits of that, but also unless they're going to have me come in to several graduate student classes, I'm not going to be able to get in front of all of them. And to not be able to do it early in the semester is a struggle as well. But I decided, I communicated to them that I think it's important for me to get in front of the graduate students early to let them know what I do and how I can help them so that I don't hear, "I wish I knew about you sooner," which I often hear, and I know a lot of you do as well. So I communicated all that to them. And if they still don't want to take me up on it, then that's on them. Like I always tell my colleagues, it's our job to communicate what we do in a really effective way and why what we do matters and how we can help. And if they don't want to take us up on it, that's on them. Like we've done all that we can do at that point. And at this point, I'm busy enough. So I will probably circle back around next year to, especially if I continue to hear from graduate students, "I wish I knew about you sooner. I wish I'd heard about this sooner." Then I will definitely collect some of those quotes and circle back around next year to be like, "Can I at least have 10 minutes? Can I introduce myself and bring some swag?" Like I might try to reframe it and try again next year. but I'm not going to force it. I'm not going to push myself. And I don't want to be overwhelming to them on their orientation day either. So I hope that that wasn't too long of an answer.
We have a question from Jennifer asking, how many librarians do you have on your team?
So we have a lot. So at UF, we have 7 branch libraries, and we have a librarian for just about every college or major at UF. So I want to say we have like over 60 subject librarians, but I am the librarian. I'm basically a solo librarian for the College of Journalism and Communications. So I serve public relations, advertising, media production, and journalism. So that is a very big college with a lot of faculty, a lot of graduate students. So I serve that college, but it's a very big college. But overall at UF, we do have a lot of librarians across our 7 libraries.
Gotcha. We have a question from Wendy asking, has this work you've outlined here translated into university committees or action teams where librarians previously had not been members?
Um, yes. So, you know, ethics in the public sphere, that's actually a really good example of it started out as a grant project and then moved into a working group, but they never would have thought to reach out to a librarian or to add a librarian as a faculty contributor to this multidisciplinary group. And it wasn't until I said, "Do you have an information literacy expert on your team?" And they said, "What's that?" And then I was like, "Well, it's blah, 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 blah." And I think that's, one of the key foundations. And I think we can all agree that the 2016 election was really good for business in terms of it made fake news something that everyone was familiar with, or it made people realize that finding and evaluating information was something that people were struggling with, where before I think it was a little more of a harder sell. So once I framed it that way, then they were like, "Yeah, oh, you do that? Oh, you're an expert in that? Oh, librarians have faculty status?" We still have to sell that too. That's not always known. Then they were like, "Oh yeah, come on." And now we have an advisory board with several faculty from all over campus, and I'm one of the co-leaders of the group, and no one's ever been like, "Well, what are you doing here? You're just a librarian." But I got to that point because I just kept showing up, and I just kept showing up and contributing. And um, then they got it. They got why I was there and what I could add to the conversation.
We have a question from Heather asking, in addition to your personal outreach, does the library do anything to promote research and instruction to faculty in general?
Yes. So we do have a communications director, we have a social media manager, we have an instruction librarian. So we do general outreach. Like we have an instruction committee that reaches out to different advisory boards and groups on campus, letting them know about research instruction services that the libraries provide. Um, and we do, send things out in the general faculty newsletters and stuff. Um, but in my opinion, it's not till I really customize the messaging to my people that they start to really show interest. Like, I didn't say this before, but if I was sending that same message to like history faculty, it would be totally different message. It would be like, let me show your students um, how to not only find primary sources, but how to evaluate them or how to analyze them. The Library of Congress has really great analyzing primary source templates, by the way. Or, let me show your students how to navigate archival materials and how to apply that to X. I would look for things that I know they would be interested in. Or if I was in anthropology, I might be like, let me show you how to find materials about indigenous populations and oral histories and things that aren't freely available on the web. That's, I think, when you have crafted messages for different disciplines to their needs, that's when they start to perk up and take notice.
Got you. We have a question from Deborah asking, are you involved in the new faculty orientation?
So I'm involved in new faculty orientation for the College of Journalism and Communications. I'm lucky in that they have their own orientation for their own new faculty. So I do still, they haven't kicked me out yet. I still do have a 30-minute session where I talk about basically what I can do for you as your librarian, what my role is. And I even sell myself as a faculty member with my own research interests, and I say to them, let's collaborate, let's co-author something. I try to set that standard from the very beginning, but then also talk to them about here's the types of instruction sessions I can do. I can meet with your students. These are the types of sessions I offer, very similar to that email that I send out. And coming to the orientation is very effective. But then I've also been involved in big faculty orientation where I've done similar things where I've helped work the table, like a table at like a resource fair, or I've been part of a presentation of like what your librarian can do for you. And so I've done the big general presentations, but then I've done the custom ones for my college.
Nice, awesome. We've gotten so many questions this webinar, folks. I'm really loving all the questions that have come in on the chat. We have Jeffrey asking, what do you think about personal librarian programs? How do you promote that to faculty? I'm thinking about instrumenting this at our college.
Well, I when you say personal librarian programs, do you mean like similar to what I do as like I'm the librarian for the College of Journalism and Communications, like I'm the subject librarian, or more like I've heard of other personal library programs where it's like every student is told, hey, this is your personal librarian.
Yeah, Jeffrey, if you want to follow up in chat or unmute to clarify that, that would be great.
Hey, this is Jeff. I was thinking more about the students' kind of personal librarian program, more like, I guess, the Princeton librarian program. That was one of the things I was thinking about trying to get instrumented, here at our college.
I think those can actually work really well because I've noticed that, people have a lot to say about whether the one-shot approach to instruction is effective or not effective. But regardless of how you feel it's effective from an educational perspective, I still think it's very effective from a marketing perspective. So I've noticed that when I meet with students, they see me, they see that I'm not scary and not intimidating, they understand, what I do and how I can help them. Once that initial barrier is removed, then they're more than willing to reach out. So if you're introducing students to, hey, this is your personal librarian, maybe they speak at an event, maybe they get a business card with their picture, maybe they watch an engaging video or they're being interviewed or introducing themselves, then that barrier is coming down. They have a face, they have a person, they have someone that is expecting them to reach out. They don't feel like they're bothering them. I think that can make a big difference.
All right. Thank you.
Welcome.
We have a question from Jenny asking, how do you hook faculty that don't think library resources and services are applicable to their programs or classes?
So I've encountered I've encountered this many times, and I think just going back to that um, peers are benefiting FOMO principle. So another example I always give is I once had a faculty member calling me about like putting a book on Course Reserve or something. And they were a new faculty member. And as I was talking to them on the phone, I said, oh, oh, you teach X class. I've done sessions for those classes before. I can, come and show, different resources for finding X, Y, and Z and talk to students about evaluating those resources. And then she was like, I don't know. They could probably figure that out themselves, or I could send them some videos. And I was like, okay, okay. Well, I used to do this session all the time for Tom or, whatever. And then she was like, oh, Tom. Well, what did you do for Tom? And so Tom's one of her colleagues that she obviously likes and trusts. And so you could see her go, well, if you did it for Tom, then it must have been good. And so then that piqued her interest, and we started talking more about what I've done in the past and how I can customize and apply to what she's doing. So I think framing it framing it as like you have a need and here's how I can meet your need, instead of talking in big generalities.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think for maybe like pointing out, like I did an instruction session for a comparable program or class, and here's how it worked out might give people, it allows people to see that it's been done before.
Yeah.
Um, we have a question and a compliment from Gwyneth asking, this was awesome. How do you stay on top of all these initiatives without getting burnt out? Sounds like a heavy lift. Email marketing, social media engagement, event coordination, meetings, buy-in. You're doing a lot. Interested to hear your workflow and all the tools that you use to stay organized. And you are crushing it. So,
Thank you. I mean, I think this is a great question because and that's why I was careful in the beginning to be like, I don't do this all at once. Like I'm not, these are things that I've rolled out over time, over 12 years of me having this job. I'm not always doing it all at once. So, there might be a semester where I'm really focused on, um, doing meeting with faculty and doing presentations. There might be another semester where I'm really trying to craft engaging emails that will get their attention. I do a lot of like, oh, I'm meeting with you about this other thing. Oh, but did you know that we also do this? So I kind of tack on a lot of things as well. And the other big thing is some of this is really fun for me. Like, I think you guys can tell I'm kind of extroverted. So I like to speak in front of students. I like to, be a part of events. I'm active on social media. And I realize not everyone is that way. So just focusing on the components that are more comfortable to you, that you know that you're good at, and then maybe leaning on others to help with like if you have a communications director for your campus or something, seeing if they might want to take pictures at an event and post about the collaboration that you're working on if you don't want to do it yourself. Um, but don't feel like you have to do all of this at once. Like you can kind of focus on parts of this per semester.
yeah, that's a really good point, especially when there's other people on your team or across campus who are positioned to, bring out the lovely camera and take pictures or just, do certain detail-oriented things that maybe like aren't necessarily in your wheelhouse.
Yeah.
Folks, we are at time. Any final questions before we head out?